Dear Cancer, something sacred is returning to your heart next week. Like a long-awaited emotional inheritance of the soul, a shift in inner safety, long overdue, a symbolic laying to rest, and a wave of divine justice carved quietly into the fabric of your life. You didn't arrive at this video by accident. You were pulled here gently, but undeniably by something wiser, because the universe has a truth it can no longer keep from you. So let me ask you, have you been feeling something stir beneath the surface lately? Like an old layer of yourself cracking and peeling away, no longer strong enough to hold you? Has your inner knowing grown louder, in still moments, tugging at your breath, offering truths you didn't ask for, but somehow already recognize? If yes, it's because you're standing at the edge of something sacred, a turning point, written in silence and emotional currents. Next week opens a threshold that only those who are truly ready will feel called to step across. But to walk through it, Cancer, you'll need to loosen your grip on something that once felt essential. This isn't just an update. It's a deeper summons, a message wrapped in ritual, in healing, and in the slow burning fire of transformation. 3 powerful forces are weaving into your world this week. A long overdue surge of emotional, nurturing the closing of an emotional chapter, what we might call a burial, a sacred surrender, and the arrival of divine justice. Not punishment, but a setting right. A rebalancing, a deep ancestral restoration. You're not here because you were casually scrolling. You're here because your soul is ready. Here in this shared space, we don't just forecast. We awaken, we remember, and we hold open the doors for truth to step through. My only role today is to speak what your deeper self already asked to hear. Maybe in a dream, maybe in a quiet moment of prayer, or maybe in those tears you let fall when no one else could see you. Cancer, this isn't a week of subtle signs. This is a tectonic shift. Something you've carried perhaps for too long is preparing to release its hold. Someone tied to your lineage may be departing not just in body, but in energy, and something that once slipped through your fingers, whether it was emotional safety, healing, respect, or rightful recognition, is beginning to make its way home to you. But hear this clearly. This won't land in your hands just because you waited long enough. You must meet it halfway with full presence, with rooted trust, and with the willingness to let go of what has already served its purpose. Before we move forward, I want to pause and say this from the deepest part of my heart. Thank you. Your presence here, every comment, every moment you've spent with this community has done more than you know. You've helped shape a space where seekers, truth-bearers, and quiet healers can breathe together. Every time you engage here, you help these messages find the people who are still searching in the dark. And believe me, Cancer, you'll want to stay until the very end of this video. What's coming through isn't just about you. It stretches across generations. It's spiritual. It's legacy level. It's bloodline deep. So let me ask you plainly, what brought you here today, dear Cancer? What emotional wave are you finally ready to lay down? And what deep sense of safety are you now strong enough to claim? Drop a comment below and speak it into the field. I am ready to receive the sacred return of emotion. Let that declaration ripple through the unseen. Let the universe hear you fully. Let's begin. Your story is just now starting to unfold, and it's not small. It's woven from the kind of quiet miracles that take years to bloom. Sometimes what we carry wasn't ours to begin with. Sometimes it's passed down through silence, through unfinished stories, and swallowed pain. And Cancer, if you've ever felt a heaviness you couldn't name pressing into your heart, maybe it belongs to someone in your lineage who never got the chance to say this hurts. And maybe this next week that voice is choosing you to speak what was never spoken, this isn't a punishment. It's a rite of passage, the kind that breaks old cycles and begins something raw and true. The word burial can sound ominous, but it doesn't always mean death in the way we fear. Sometimes it means release, a sacred farewell. Sometimes the thing that needs to be laid to rest is a role you've worn like second skin. The steady one who keeps the peace, who swallows discomfort, who becomes the soft landing for everyone else's storm. But even the deep ocean has its boundaries, and your soul cancer has reached a point where it no longer wants to carry, it wants to choose, it wants to live. When the death card appears beside the 10 of Pentacles and the 4 of Swords, it speaks to something far deeper than a personal transformation. This is often the sign of an ancestral chapter finally reaching its edge. You, Cancer, may be the one chosen to end a story that's been echoing through your bloodline. Stories built on emotional scarcity, silence, unspoken grief, passed down like heirlooms. You may be the one who finally says, "It ends with me." And healing, though it's sacred, isn't always soft. Sometimes it shakes the very foundation you were taught to protect. It gets loud, it spills out. It reorders the landscape of what once felt secure, but it also clears the dense brush, makes room for truth to breathe and root into the earth. There's something quietly powerful about choosing not to repeat, but to redeem. And redemption doesn't always arrive like thunder. Often it starts as something small and steady. A hard conversation you finally have, a boundary you quietly set, a journal page filled with the words you never dared to speak aloud. That too is healing. Not flawless, but real brave. And in the stillness after that first courageous act, something in you may soften. You might start to notice how your breath comes easier when you stop holding space for everyone else's chaos at the cost of your own center. You may begin to feel what it's like to lay down the role that was never meant to be yours forever, and in its place, make room for love. Not the kind you earn by self-sacrifice, but the kind that meets you as you are. No performance needed. There's a passage I often come back to when speaking to souls like yours, the ones who feel everything, who work to keep the peace, even when it chips away at their own sense of self. It's the reminder that when a seed falls into the earth and dies, that's not an ending. It's the very beginning. There's wisdom in surrender, not in giving up, but in giving over. To honesty, to change, to a life shaped not by duty handed down through generations, but by the choices you decide to make. You don't need to rescue your whole bloodline, but if you can lay down what was never yours to carry, if you can let it rest with compassion and truth, then you become the turning point. The one who future generations will remember and say, because of them, everything shifted. So I ask you this softly and sincerely. Is there a grief, a guilt, or a fear you've been holding that doesn't actually belong to you? And if so, are you ready to put it down? If your heart whispered yes, then speak it clearly in the comments. I release what is not mine. My heart is my safe home. Let it be said. Let it be felt. Let this be your burial of the old and your entrance into something deeply, sacredly new. Not every injustice screams. Sometimes it's hidden in a lost document, a promise that was never meant to be kept, an inheritance conveniently forgotten. Cancer, if you've ever felt brushed aside, written out, or quietly dismissed in the story of your own family, then this part of your path is where the pen returns to your hand. The energy moving through you now isn't about revenge. It's not about anger. It's about truth finally coming back to its rightful place. And not because you demanded it with force, but because you chose to carry grace even in the silence. There's a quiet kind of holiness in the way you've kept harmony. You've chosen reflection over reaction, steadiness over chaos. But peace comes at too high a price when it asks you to leave yourself behind. This is the moment where the scale starts to tip, Not because you're forcing it, but because the weight of the truth is finally heavier than the lie. When the Justice card appears beside Judgment, it's not a coincidence. It tells the story of balance returning, not randomly, but with intention, with precision. The kind of divine alignment that comes after years of quiet endurance and unseen effort. It brings into the light what's been kept hidden, not to punish, but to set it right. And when the tower rises in this energy, yes, it may shake the walls, but don't mistake that for destruction. Sometimes disruption is just the moment when confusion clears. When the structure of something old finally crumbles, not because it's cruel, but because it can no longer hold the weight of who you've become. And right alongside it, the Ace of Pentacles, a card that doesn't just whisper of hope, but places something in your hands. Something real, a payout, a contract, an opportunity, a gift, long withheld, the kind you can finally touch and say, "This is mine." And deep down, it always was. If you've ever been the one at the table, smiling, nodding, keeping the peace, even while your bones held a truth no one else dared name, you're not alone. And now, Cancer, you're no longer voiceless either. You're being asked to choose truth, not to start a fire, but to clear the air. To free yourself, not through battle, but through clarity. And what's even more powerful than being granted justice is reclaiming your rightful place in the story without needing anyone else's permission to do so. This is the perfect time to write it down. All the things you never said, the moments you bit your tongue to avoid shaking the room, the pieces you gave away that should have been yours to keep. Then, if you feel called to burn that page, not in fury, but in finality, let that ash fall into soil. And from that ground, let your worth begin to root itself again. That is what divine justice looks like when it walks into your real life. It's not always loud. It moves like subtle, undeniable currents. It shows up in forms you can't ignore. In paperwork, phone calls, decisions, signatures. It reveals itself through conversations you never expected, doors you thought were closed, and moments that just feel right. And no, it's not revenge. It's not compensation for suffering. It's simply what happens when the energy you've held with quiet integrity finally meets the result you've always deserved. We're so often taught that faith is something we aim outward at the skies, at the unknown. But sometimes faith is believing that truth doesn't stay buried. It rises slowly, like a seed breaking through winter. And when it does, it doesn't just liberate you, it sets the story right. So ask yourself gently, where in your life have you chosen quiet over fairness? Where did you keep the peace while losing pieces of yourself? And are you finally ready to receive without apology what was always meant for you? If your answer is yes, then say it in the comments. I am ready to reclaim my emotional safety. Speak it so the energy can move. Let the unseen witness your return. There are times when letting go feels like a risk too big to take because we've learned to cling tightly to the roles that earned us approval, stability, affection, even when those roles no longer reflect who we truly are. But Cancer, here's the paradox that's surfacing for you this week. The parts of yourself you believed had to be sacrificed to stay safe or worthy are the very barriers keeping your blessings at bay. Sometimes abundance doesn't arrive because you're not trying hard enough. It waits because you're still approaching it from the version of you that believes you have to struggle to be worthy. And abundance doesn't respond to suffering. It responds to readiness. It arrives when your spirit and your soil are finally clear enough to receive it. That's where the shift begins. Not in your bank account, but in your beliefs. The energy of the Ace of Pentacles, paired with the Six of Pentacles and the Nine of Cups, paints a very real picture. Your material world is catching up with your emotional truth. These cards whisper of tangible rewards, unexpected funds, legal wins, inheritances, released job offers that feel aligned in ways you didn't think possible, but they are not rewards for enduring. They are reflections of a deeper self-worth that no longer negotiates its value. One of the most powerful things you can do right now is revisit how you relate to wealth. Not just how you spend it, but how you allow it to come in. Ask yourself this: have I been quietly pushing away financial blessings because I thought I hadn't earned them the hard way? If that rings true, it's time to rewrite that story. Draft a new financial vision, not based on scarcity, but rooted in what's possible. Don't build it on fear. Build it on faith in who you've become. Imagine shaping a life that doesn't compensate for your past, but creates from your power. And don't be surprised if this transformation begins with a sense of loss. Sometimes before abundance enters a door, must gently or suddenly close. A farewell might be part of this shift. You may have to bury a version of yourself, the one who stayed small to be accepted, who gave more to prove they belonged. That version got you here, but it cannot walk with you into what's next. Let it go with grace. Write the letter, light the candle, say the goodbye. Not rushed, not angry, just real. And then open your hands, because what follows may feel miraculous, but it's not a miracle. It's divine balance finding its way back into form. Sometimes it's only after the final release that we're clear enough, quiet enough, and open enough to receive what's been waiting all along. If you've ever sat in that valley space, the slow, quiet middle where it felt like nothing was moving, let me remind you, even in the darkest soil, seeds are waking up. Growth begins underground. Roots strengthen in silence, long before the bloom breaks the surface. I've watched it happen in lives where control was surrendered. Then came the job offer no one expected. The family healing that arrived overnight. The bank account that shifted after one deeply honest conversation. These aren't coincidences. They're natural outcomes. The way the world responds when your internal truth finally lines up with external possibility. So ask yourself gently, what am I willing to release just so I can truly receive? And if the answer is everything that no longer belongs, say it out loud, write it down. Let it be known not as a cry for compensation, but as a quiet return to what was always yours. A life that reflects your strength, your growth, your honest worth. There are moments when life softens at the edges, when something just beyond the veil begins to reach for you. Maybe it's the smell of your grandmother's perfume lingering in a still room. Maybe it's a dream you've had 3 nights in a row, a kitchen light left on, a figure in the doorway who feels both familiar and far. Cancer, when these moments touch you, don't dismiss them. Don't talk yourself out of what you know. What you're sensing may be something or someone from your lineage reaching through to remind you. You are not walking this alone. You come from a line of women who endured more than they spoke, who poured their wisdom into meals, into gardens, into stories that were never written down, but somehow lived on in you. And in this season of your life, one of them is stepping closer, not to ask for anything, but to give. She brings with her what was once withheld: truth, courage, clarity, permission. When the high priestess appears beside the moon, it's a clear message: ancestral memory, intuition, quiet guidance from the unseen. The Four of Wands reminds us that home isn't always a place. Sometimes it's a feeling, a presence that anchors us through transition. And the Six of Cups whispers that the past doesn't disappear. It shapes the way we love, what we fear, and what we return to. But what if instead of avoiding those echoes, you welcome them in? What if the recurring dream isn't just nostalgia, but a message ready to be heard? You might start noticing patterns, numbers, repeating feathers in strange places. a sudden draw toward traditions or lands you've never fully explored. These aren't random. These are confirmations, markers along the path that say you are about to step into something bigger than your own story, a calling, a promise, a purpose that's been echoing across time just to meet you here. Astrologically, this may be a time when your 12th house, the space of spiritual inheritance, inner healing, and ancestral reckoning, is being awakened. That doesn't mean darkness, it means depth. You may find yourself revisiting old memories, recognizing generational patterns, and feeling the urge not to repeat but to repair. And that work starts with one simple act: acknowledgement. Light a candle. Right to the woman whose strength runs through your veins. Not just the one who birthed you, but the one who gave you her resilience, her silence, her love tucked between the folds of forgotten recipes and unsaid things. Thank her. Ask her what needs to be remembered. Sleep with that letter under your pillow for 3 nights, not as superstition, but as trust. When the time feels right, burn it. Let its smoke carry the message across. What opens in you afterward might surprise you, because sometimes the clearest guidance doesn't speak in words. It arrives as a steadying, a sudden peace. The quiet realization that you are seen by someone long gone and still deeply with you. And when you allow yourself to feel that something shifts, you stop grasping for the answers, and instead you start listening. You may not have asked for this path, Cancer, but if you're here, it's likely because you've been chosen not to hold the burden, but to carry the light forward. And there's something beautiful, even holy, about realizing that in healing your part of the story, you're healing hers too. If your heart feels the truth in that, let it be known. I am open to the blessings of those who walked before me. My heart remembers its strength. Say it in the comments. Let their legacy rise through you. Let your story be the bridge that brings it home. Because there comes a time when the version of you that kept the peace, held the weight, and shrank yourself to keep others comfortable must be laid to rest. Not in shame, not in regret, but in honor. Cancer, this is that time. The version of you who dimmed your light so others wouldn't feel small. Who bent your truth to preserve the illusion of harmony. That version was never wrong. It was your way of surviving. But now that chapter is complete. What comes next asks you to rise as someone completely new. When the Empress crosses paths with the Magician in a spread, it isn't just symbolic, it's a sacred invitation. The Empress speaks of creation-rooted power and lush abundance. The Magician brings direction, intention, and active manifestation. Together they don't whisper, they declare. And when joined by the Chariot and the World, something even bigger unfolds. Not just forward motion, but the closing of a soul cycle. And then there it is, the Ace of Wands. Fire in its purest form, reminding you that the spark of something extraordinary has already ignited inside you. What happens with that spark now that's entirely in your hands? It's not enough anymore to hold potential like a secret. Now is the time to move with it. And that shift starts with something small and revolutionary. The word no. No to the roles that shrink you. No to carrying the weight that was never yours. No to being someone's afterthought. No to the stories that ask you to tolerate what your spirit no longer recognizes as true. This is your moment to declare, not softly, but out loud, and often, that you are no longer available for the life that asks you to stay small. In healing and energy work, we always say the outside reflects the inside. So if you've been pulled to clean out your closet, rearrange your space, shift how you move, that's not surface change, that's sacred alignment. The more you let your body speak your next chapter, the more the universe listens. Try this. Shift your posture. Stand like someone who knows. Light a candle before you get dressed. change your phone background to something bold and affirming. These aren't just rituals, they are declarations. They say, I'm no longer who I was. Watch who I become. One of the most grounding practices I recommend in times of transformation like this is writing, especially this one. Every morning for 7 days, write 3 times, I am the architect of my new emotional home. This isn't just affirmation. It's recoding your internal landscape. You're not waiting for life to change. You're becoming the force that initiates it. And yes, rebirth isn't always soft. Often it starts in the soil of grief. The letting go of people, roles, identities that once felt like home, even if they hurt. But grief is not failure, it's recognition. And from that recognition, space opens. And into that space, your power walks in. You've spent so long being the steady breeze that others leaned on. But now you are the deep ocean that holds its own currents. You are the architect of your new emotional home, not because someone gave you permission, but because you finally chose yourself. The quiet strength you've nurtured in silence is becoming visible. And the world, Cancer, is not responding to your past. It's rising to meet who you are becoming. So I invite you fully and without apology to declare this now in the comments. I am no longer who I was. I am the sovereign of my sacred heart. Let that be the stone you place over the grave of your old self with honor and tenderness. And let your next breath be the first breath of a leader reborn. If you've made it here, Cancer, this isn't the ending of a message. This is the entrance to a new life. You've walked beside me through the symbolic burial of old roles, through the gentle unraveling of what no longer fits, and into the fierce return of everything that was always meant for you. And now, in the quiet stillness of this moment, I want to remind you of something sacred, something you may have forgotten in your silence. You were never invisible to the universe. Every tear you swallowed, every truth you held in your chest to keep the peace, every act of love you offered without being asked, they were seen. They mattered. And this next week, Cancer, the earth responds. You don't need to plead for justice anymore. You don't need to justify your worth. That time is behind you. Now is the time to embody. You are no longer the one bending to carry the load. You are the one being lifted because your soul chose truth over comfort, becoming over approval, substance over image. So let me ask you, what would shift if you trusted, truly trusted that everything you need is already on its way to you? Not because you earned it through exhaustion, but because you healed enough to receive it. What if this next week became the one where you stopped apologizing, stopped hiding, stopped dimming yourself for the comfort of others? This isn't just about tarot, and it's bigger than astrology. It's about you, your power to take what you've heard here and make it tangible. Light the candle, speak the truth, write what's real, move your body, refresh your space, dress like your future self. Forgive the version of you that didn't know better, and claim what's always been yours. Your path isn't linear, it spirals. And every time you find yourself at this threshold, you return stronger, louder in your stillness, bolder in your knowing, clearer in your energy. And from that clarity, you begin to attract not what you tolerated, but what reflects your new alignment. So if something in you feels awakened right now, if your gut is saying this is for me, then I invite you to breathe into that knowing and type these words in the comments. I am ready to live in truth. I am no longer afraid. I'm here now. I remember who I am. Let it echo across this sacred space. Let it be a signal to your ancestors, your future self, your spirit. If this video stirred, your heart reminded you of your strength, or offered even one sentence that felt meant just for you, click like to let the universe know you're receiving. Subscribe if you want to keep walking this path with me, because your journey isn't over. It's only just shifting. And share this message with someone who needs light today. You never know whose healing begins with your courage. Cancer child of water, child of the moon, remember this. Love is real. Safety is real. And so are you. Until next time, thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing truth. And thank you for letting me speak what your soul has always known.